Good to see you all. I don't present very often, so you'll have to forgive me if my presentation skills aren't quite up to scratch. I might host meetings, but never sort of have to present in front of people. Like Kira said, I intend it to be sort of informal, really, but I'm just kind of going to run through a few sort of main issues in relation to governance and charities, and then a small bit on the financial side. And like Kira said, questions at the end, but if there's something specific on a specific topic during it, I don't mind if you interrupt me to ask the question where it might be relevant. So I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully you'll all be able to see it. I just have a few slides put together. I should probably have done something first. Sorry, folks. Try that again. Hopefully you can all see that, Kira. You might let me know.
Yep.
It looks all right. Yeah. So just to give you all a very brief summary of Irish charities, I don't think people realise quite how many charities in Ireland are actually very, very small charities. The vast majority, 81%, have income of less than 500,000, and actually 50% of income of less than 100,000. So while we do have a thriving charity sector, people sort of assume that there's a huge amount of larger charities, but actually we're made up of an awful lot of smaller charities. And it's the smaller charities who struggle with things like governance and get the time and the energy to actually put it in place, what you need to put in place. So just thought I'd start off then just to give you a brief summary of, to consider whether you're actually operating a charity or not. Some people don't actually know if they should really be a registered charity. So the Charities Regulator has 3 relevant questions that you need to ask. Does your organisation operate in the Republic of Ireland? That's an easy answer. Does your organisation have exclusively charitable purposes? In relation to charitable purposes, most people know the things like the relief of poverty, advancement of education and religion, but also any other purposes of benefit to the community. For example, community development, civic responsibility, health, conflict resolution, there's a whole host of things. So actually companies that might not think they're a charity actually are charities, albeit that they may or may not be registered. And finally, does your organisation provide a clear public benefit either here or elsewhere? So public benefit is considered to be something which is beneficial in an identifiable way to the general public. So if, for example, you fundraised for one specific person who had an illness, that's not considered to be a public benefit. Whereas if you decided that you were going to fundraise for asthmatics, for want of another option, then that would be a public benefit, albeit that it's not necessarily for all of the public, but it would be for a selection of the public. So that's obviously the most important thing, is actually to ascertain whether you are a charity. There are benefits from being a registered charity. You're obviously in compliance with the law, You can demonstrate that you operate to highest standards of governance, which can be very important, I guess, if you're looking for statutory fund contracts. You can show your commitment to transparency and accountability. You can have exemption from revenue. It's much easier to secure on-street collection permits for your charity if you are registered. And ultimately, and this is probably the most important thing for all organisations, it helps to build trust and confidence in the organisation from the public. And unfortunately, the charities sector a number of years ago has had quite a few issues in it. So I suppose that's why the governance code has been introduced, so that we can all subscribe to the highest standards and operate as best we can. So briefly, the responsibility of charities, you obviously have to be compliant with the Charities Act 2009, which includes a list of key duties and responsibilities. Just to cover the main legal responsibilities, you have to comply with your charity's governance document. If you're a limited company, that will be your constitution. If you're unincorporated, you might have some sort of a trust document or a deed or just even a set of rules that were applied when you set up the organisation. You must ensure that your charity is carrying out charitable purposes for a public benefit. You must be registered with the Charities Regulator, and you must keep proper books of accounts, and you provide an annual report, financial statements, and an annual return to the Charities Regulator. So I don't know how familiar people are with the governance code. People that know me know it's a little bit of a hobby horse for me. I sit on a number of charitable boards, and I think last year I ended up having 5 companies compliant with the Charities Governance Code, which was quite a feat. So primarily it's made up of 6 principles of governance, Then we have core standards that all charities should meet, and then there are additional standards reflecting best practice for charities. The additional standards are mostly focused towards larger, more complex charities. So people should really only be initially concerned with focusing on the core standards, and if you can meet some of the additional standards, obviously that's great. Just to note that registered charities were expected to comply with the code by the 31st of December 2020. There was quite a bit of advertising taken in the last few months of 2020 around this, but I still don't know that there's enough information in the public domain to let people know that they actually should already be compliant. And the reporting on the compliance will first take place in 2021 when you're filing your annual return with the Charities regulator. I suppose just to note that if you haven't read the Charities Governance Code, it's a lengthy enough document, but actually it's written very well, and it was kind of written with small charities in mind, you know, people that might only have a couple of paid staff or might only be volunteer-led, so that it wasn't so onerous that people couldn't either A, understand it, or B, comply with it. So there are 6 principles of governance within the code. There is the advance in charitable purpose, which is obviously what we discussed earlier, relief of poverty, advancement of education, or community benefit. That one's relatively straightforward. The second one then is behaving with integrity. Obviously, ethics are fundamental in the charity sector, and it's all about creating an ethical culture and set a tone where you have agreed values that you bring with your charity. The third principle then is leading people. Obviously, the most essential resource of any charity is its people and its volunteer, you know, both staff and volunteers. And it's important that people should be valued and actually, you know, have clarity around what their role is and what the roles of others within the charities are. The fourth principle then is exercising control. Exercising control largely is the responsibility of the charity trustees to make sure that the organisation is governed well, you know, that they meet any standards or compliance that they're required to meet. And it keeps confidence the regulators, the funders, the beneficiaries, and ultimately the general public. The fifth principle then is working effectively. So it's just making sure that you have the right skill set within your board, or that you have the right people doing the right job within the charity. And then finally, and the most important in my eyes always, is being accountable and transparent, and just showing the public that you are doing what you set out to do and that their money is being well spent. So there are 10 steps to compliance with Charities Code. So these come from the Charities regulator, but basically you need to read the code. You need to decide if you're a complex charity, which I would imagine most organisations on tonight probably are not. You decide what actions you need to take, or what actions you already take to meet the relevant standards. There's a compliance record form on the Charities regulator website. You state the action in that you actually take to meet the requirements. And if the standard doesn't apply, you state why. So there would be certain things, for example, for some charities, they don't actually fundraise from the public. So that there's a particular standard in there in relation to fundraising from the public. So it doesn't apply if you don't fundraise, you just put a note in to say that and that's it. Then you state your evidence next to your action in your charity, in your compliance record form. For example, one of them might be, I'm trying to, sorry, think off the top of my head now. One of them might just be that you hold regular board meetings, and the evidence of your regular board meetings is your board minutes. You should review your compliance record form and agree it at a board meeting of trustees. And then when you're actually filing your annual return, you will be required to either declare compliance or declare why you're not compliant. And I suppose this is probably what's going to become very crucial to most charities towards the end of this year. If you have a 31st of December year end, I think the annual return date is the 31st of October. So there's still a good bit of time yet to get yourself in order and be compliant. And then every year you're supposed to review the steps 3 to 7 above and prepare an updated compliance record form at the board meeting before reporting on your compliance. So firstly, most important thing is don't panic. Most organisations don't realise that they actually already have a huge amount of the evidence in place. It's only a matter of collating it and completing your compliance record. Your regular board meetings cover quite a number of the standards. And the main areas where charities do have to do a little bit of work around is usually the formal policies and procedures, the role descriptions that you have for trustees, the chair, staff and volunteers. You need to identify your stakeholders, which can often be much wider than you initially think. You have to prepare an annual plan or strategic plan. It doesn't need to be a 40-page document. A 2-page document showing what you actually plan to do for the next 12 months can be very, very useful. And then a risk register. And in relation to your risk register, I suppose people sort of think, oh my God, you know, how much stuff needs to go onto my risk register? If you can't actually think of the main risks off the top of your head, then they're probably not main risks for your organization. Usually one of the primary risks is funding, and sort of things around financial and stuff like that. If you work with vulnerable people, then obviously that, you know, the risk of anything happening then will be your risk. But you don't need to have a risk register with 40 risks. You know, 5 to 10 key risks is usually enough for most small charities. Most importantly, there are a huge number of free resources out there. I should have said, actually, I'm happy for the slides to be shared with the attendees if they would like them, because there's a couple of links in there that might just be useful to look at. So Charities Regulator website itself actually has quite a large number of documents up there. Gives you sample board minutes, gives you a sample role of chair, role of secretary, a template for a risk register. It actually has a fully completed sample compliance record form, which is actually very, very useful because it gives you, it basically shows you things that you might not think of in relation to your evidence for various items. The Carmichael Centre also have a similar type of document. They also have a large number of policies that might be of use to you when you're trying to put together your policies and procedures. There are other organisations out there. Volunteer Ireland have one certainly around volunteers. They probably have other ones. The Wheel is another organisation. So there's quite a lot of information out there that can help you get to where you need to get to. Then just a couple of other matters in relation to governance. It's very important to consider that your board of trustees is fit for purpose. You really should carry out a regular review of your skill sets to see what you need. You might need HR, legal, financial, there's marketing, there's a whole range of things that might be relevant to your particular charity. It's not always easy to source new board members, but I do find by and large, legal apparently is one of the harder ones to source. But you meet people, talk to people, see who might be willing to come on your board. You can also advertise on boardmatch.ie, which is specifically designed for getting trustees for not-for-profit organisations. It's important to ensure you have a succession plan in place. Over-reliance on 1 or 2 key individuals is not very useful if 1 or 2 key individuals happen to become unavailable at any point in time. Or, they want to retire. You need to have people coming behind them that will be able to step in and take over those roles, just like you would in in employment. If they're all volunteers, you still need to have that succession plan. And this is one I think that's probably going to become more and more relevant, term limits for trustees. So there has been a lot of publicity around, trustees serve for 20 and 30 years, and it's not considered best practice. The Charities Regulator suggests a maximum of 9 years. They don't say you can't have longer than 9 years, but you should really be able to justify why your trustees are there longer than 9 years. So just to cover a few small financial related, mostly tax related, funnily enough, matters in respect to charities. So when you are a registered charity, you can apply to the Revenue Commissioners for your charitable tax exemption. It covers income tax, corporation tax, capital gains tax, DWT. There's a whole host of taxes it covers. There is no general VAT exemption for charities, however, and that's largely because most charities that have to operate VAT, it's usually in respect of shops or bars, it just depends, and therefore you're in direct competition with other commercial traders, and for that reason, in order to avoid distortion of competition, they do insist that you are VAT registered in respect to that portion of your income only. There is a VAT compensation scheme for charities. It's not hugely well publicised, and there might not be a significant amount you can claim back, but most charities might be able to get something back. So it applies for VAT paid on expenditure from the 1st of January 2018, which is when it was introduced. You can only submit 1 claim per year. So you submit the claim between the 1st of January and the 30th of June for the previous year. The claims are dealt with on a first come, first served basis, which is quite important because the actual cap on the VAT compensation scheme is 5 million per annum. So if you're not one of the first in and you're one of the last in, you may not actually get your VAT you might actually not be able to recover your VAT. So basically, you can claim a refund of the proportion of your eligible VAT based on your non-public funding. So if you're entirely publicly funded, then you cannot actually recover any VAT under the compensation scheme. If 50% of your income is fundraised and 50% is publicly funded, then you can possibly get back up to 50% of your eligible VAT costs. That would be VAT on your light and heat and your telephone bills and all those other small costs that don't be long adding up. And it's just important to note the expenditure must have been paid for within the year for which the VAT has been claimed, and it must be incurred for goods and services used by the charity only for its charitable purpose. There's also the charitable donation scheme. So basically, eligible charities that are registered with revenue are authorised to operate the scheme. So if an individual donates 250 euros or more to you in a year, then the approved body can claim a refund of tax on top of the donation. Basically, revenue regrossed at 31%. So for a donation of 250 euros from one individual, you can get a tax relief of 77.50. That obviously increases depending on the amount of donation. It's just that the minimum amount of donation is 250 euros from any one individual. It's just the forms there that need to be completed by the donor. So just a quick summary of, to me, the key financial matters. Even if you're a very, very small charity, I think it's really important to prepare a simple financial budget each year, what you hope to get in, what you expect to spend, and hopefully those at least balance. I think maybe being a chartered accountant leads me a little bit more strongly on this point, but you should always probably ensure that you have some sort of either an experienced or qualified person to act as your treasurer for oversight. The finances are just so important for charities that if you can at all, it's worth having somebody that knows what they're doing. They don't have to be a qualified accountant, but somebody that knows their numbers and knows how to work with numbers. It's very important to have your strong financial controls in place. Things like you might have 2 signatories on all payments exceeding a certain amount. That amount might depend on the size of your charity, whether you have paid staff, whether you have volunteers only. Online banking, again, you should probably have at least 2 people. All cash donations and collections should be counted and signed off, counted by 2 people at a very minimum and signed off, a simple sheet signed to agree the amount, and then obviously that then gets lodged to the bank account. You should have limits on the amount of money that can be spent on debit cards and credit cards. And again, that would be dependent on the organisation and what's best for you. Any significant expenditure should be approved at a board meeting and minuted, so that if somebody comes back in 2 years' time and asks to approve the spending of X amount, then you just pull out your board minutes and say, here, this is where it was approved, it's all legitimate and above board. And you should have a fixed asset policy to ensure that they're all insured and that they're kept secure. The Charities Regulator actually is a very good document on financial control guidelines. Some of it might not be relevant to you, but it's actually certainly worth a look just to see what might suit you. And that's me.
Thank you, Kathya. That was great.
Bit of a whistle-stop tour, sorry folks.
It was a useful overview. So yeah, I guess we can take any questions or comments. I suppose what we really wanted to get out of these sessions was that, I know the Charities Regulator and different bodies do training and presentations and talks, but sometimes, you might be sitting there going, oh God, is my question really daft? Can I ask that? Or, just that fear maybe of asking the regulator themselves. So I suppose we just wanted to kind of have a very casual, informal, no question, too silly, too anything. So it's open to the floor really to anyone concerns that they might have, and it's your chance, I suppose, to ask and just get as honest an answer as we can give. And I'm sure if Kathya hasn't got the answer to hand, she'll be, we can take notes and we can try and get find a reference point for you or a source to answer your question.
Clara, if I may, it's Paul O'Sullivan, Enniscrone Men's Shed in Sligo. And we've been looking at this governance piece in relation to doing it for our shed. And one of the things I'm looking at is that we have a duty of care to the members. And one thing that I that's not really developed very well is sort of when you say risk assessment, is that risk assessments that's associated with physical activities just as much as risk assessments, with accountancy and accounts and financials as such, and that obviously will tie in really for a safety statement, because the safety statement will drive the physical risk assessments. Because any charity should be carrying out safety statement and risk assessments per se under the Health and Safety Authority's rules. And that is the case, is it? Are we required to do that?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's operational risks, there's financial risks, and like you say there's physical risks. And particularly probably, Paul, with the kind of organisation you're involved in, some of those physical risks might be higher than somebody with an office-based charity, yeah. But absolutely anything that's likely to cause any issue in your charity probably should be on a risk register. So the other risk then is, publicity risk, the risk of something going wrong and the public hearing about it, and that's, it's another substantial risk, particularly in the charitable sector. So you're correct, your physical risk should be on there. And as you say, they tie in. So basically you identify the risk, you identify the impact and the likelihood. And obviously you want to keep that as low as possible, but you might have a high likelihood, you might have a high impact, but actually your safety statement and people subscribing to your safety statement reduces the risk. What's how you mitigate it.
Sorry, what's an operational risk?
God, you put me on the spot now. It might be, for example, if a key staff member was ill, who's going to run the organisation?
Or if your building or your premises became unavailable, or something like that, something that would cause difficulties in your operations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
And just to say, I suppose we have in the Volunteer Centre have some templates on this kind of thing that I can circulate to the whole group. We recently did our own risk stuff actually, so I can circulate some of the.
Well, the Health and Safety, I was on the Health and Safety Authority website, and they have, I can't remember, is it Be Wise or Be Safe, which they do templates in which you can carry out risk assessments.
Okay.
That's great. That's a good resource, yeah.
To let you know that, but you have to go to Health and Safety Authority's website for that.
Okay.
And there's a lot of information actually on that, but I was just wondering what the implications, because I mean, obviously that, but you're talking about an operational. I have a bit of background on the physical risk, but not in financial risk. Like,
the financial one is always easy. Have I enough money to run my charity? And is like anybody going to steal from my charity? They tend to be the two that are of key importance. Obviously you can list them out in all sorts of nice, weird, and wonderful ways, but ultimately that's what it boils down to. And
would that be included in documentation on the charity's website? You mentioned financial.
Yes, I think I actually said they have a sample risk register on their site, so I'm sure it's probably listed on that. I didn't actually list it.
Okay, I can take that. I'll have a look at it.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else have any? Yeah, Geraldine. Sorry, just unmute you there. You're muted, Geraldine.
Yeah. Hi. I'm Geraldine Barker. I'm the Secretary of Clibney Community Forum. We're only recently formed, and we're just applying for charitable status now. So we've submitted our application last October. We've been through one round with them, and we're going through another. I suppose the big issue, the question with all of these is at what point do you have to start all of this? Because when you're starting from the bottom, it feels quite overwhelming. And you kind of, things like the risk register and stuff. At what point do you really have to have all of these things in place?
Okay, I'm going to give you two answers. The correct answer is probably straight away.
Right.
However, Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes time and energy to put all these things together. If you're only recently registered, Geraldine, I would suspect that you would probably not actually need to be reporting on your compliance until 2022.
Okay.
So I would probably attempt to focus on trying to be as compliant as you can by the end of this year. And you probably find as you go along, you probably will be doing bits and pieces while you get yourselves up and running that will actually make you compliant. But yeah, the technical answer is probably straight away, but obviously that's not feasible in most places. So yeah.
Because I have to say, I found the process for this and for various other things is people have assumed you've done a lot already, and they say, oh, it's a simple application form or whatever, and then you think, well, it's not actually, because we haven't reached that issue yet, and we've suddenly got to work out how we're going to deal with that. But
Of course.
yeah, thank you for the pragmatic answer.
Yeah, and it's a lot for volunteers to take on, you know, and a lot for charities to take on as well. And I suppose, you know, I'm a paid staff member in the volunteer centre, and it has taken us some time to get everything together. We're just kind of completing that now. So, and I do think, you know, that there will be, it'll take the charities regulator quite a while as well to get through all the registered charities that they have, you know. And again, if there's anything we can help with regards templates, our own experiences, was again, that's what this is about. We've kind of been through this ourselves, and, you know, have learned from that and have built up a bank of stuff, and we're quite happy to share that with anyone if it helps them along the way as well.
Sorry, could I just come back in? I don't want to be hogging the whole floor here, but you mentioned about being registered with the charity regulator. Now, the IMSA, the Irish Men's Health Association, is registered with the charity regulator, and I'm sure they make returns. I didn't realize you have to do financial statement returns too. Does that mean the likes of us, which is a small little organization, has to make returns too as well to the regulator?
Okay, Paul, that kind of depends on how you're set up. So are you a separate company from the national organization?
No, I'm an unincorporated, and we actually use the charging number of the IMSA.
Okay.
Then I suspect the answer is they're probably already dealing with any compliance that you need to deal with, but I'm going to double check that and come back to you. If you're using their charity number,
yeah, because I was on one of the governance, the charity regulator governance Zoom call in November, and they talked about, you know, I said, you know, do I come under the umbrella of the IMSA? She says it really comes down to the organization, because she made the example of the Girl Guides are doing it all, you know, for the Girl Guides, they do it, but the Boy Scouts of Ireland aren't. So each organization themselves, countrywide, have to set up themselves and work through it. So you know, I've tried talking to the IMSA, but you know, they're very slow. So if they've the charging number, am I sitting underneath them that I don't have to do returns, financial returns, and so forth?
okay, do you make returns to them?
No.
Or do they fund you?
No.
Okay, then my gut, I'm going to come back to this, Paul, but my gut would tell me that you probably need to be independently registered then.
As a charity? As
a charity. You don't have to be a limited company to be a charity. An unincorporated entity can register as a charity. But my gut would tell me, but it's only my gut, I can't tell you for sure, but my gut would tell me that if they're not funding you, then, and you're not making returns to them, your returns have to go somewhere.
Well, we pay a registration fee with them.
Okay. Yeah, it's an unusual one. But I would have thought that if you take a step back, every charity should be making financial. There's a national charity that has lots of little organizations under it, and they're making returns up to the national and making the returns. That seems fine. But in your case, if that's not happening, I would suspect that you probably should be you should probably be separately registered and making your own returns.
And do those have to be certified returns to the regulator?
No, as far as I'm aware, if you have income, and don't quote me on this, although I am an accountant in practice, I should know better, but I think if your income is under 100,000, they don't have to be audited or certified. If your income's over 100,000, as far as I know, they do.
Okay. That's great. Thank you very much. Sorry
No
for...
problem.
Sorry.
Rita wants to come in there. So we just get you to unmute, Rita. Can I do that?
No.
Yep. There we go.
Sorry about that. I'm Strantiel ICA, and Dolly's Cottage, same thing, in Strandhill. And now we would be the same as Paul, I think that man's name is. We would make, we would pay an annual fee to central office, and we use the charity, their charity number, and that's the way we've always done it. Now they don't fund us, but well, they did help us out on a few occasions, but from year to year they don't fund us. We pay our annual subscription, and so we don't make returns either. It's central office, everything goes through them.
Okay. And you probably do a certain level of either fundraising from the public or raising money for the public through Dolly's Cottage and stuff like that.
Well, very little really. We haven't done that.
Imagine,
yeah. We're open to the public during the summer, and we try and get a few bob that way.
Yeah.
But we in Strandhill are responsible for the upkeep of Dolly's Cottage.
Okay.
In that central office.
Okay.
So, we're...
I'm going to ask a daft question now, but do you own Dolly's Cottage, or who owns Dolly's Cottage?
Yeah, it's held in trust by central office.
By central office, okay.
Yeah. Strandhill Guild don't own it as such. We just run it. We're responsible for all the bills.
Yeah, the hard part.
Yeah. Now, they do pay the insurance. Central office do pay the insurance.
That's even more complicated than Paul's one. Again, Rita, my gut would tell me that you probably should be making returns, but I'm going to double check it, and I definitely will come back to you within the next couple of days, because there's no point in giving you a half right answer. I will find out the right answer for sure and come back to you.
Thank you very much. Well, I hope not. I hope not at the central office. Otherwise, we're gone.
Thanks, Rita. I see Pat there looking to.
Thank you.
Sorry, just through the chair. Winch and Achira operate the same system that has been described by Paul and Rita. And we're using their charity number, and we pay a fee every year to them. And we've never been asked for a return of any kind from them. So I just don't know where exactly all this stands, I'm just wondering. The second question in my mind.
You're really challenging me tonight.
The second question that I have in my head is, you mentioned the risk assessment and what was the other thing, an asset register or something like that. When you have all that done, what do you do with it, apart from keeping it on a file? Do you send it to this crowd in Dublin, the charity regulator, or what? Or
no, so none of it has to be submitted to the charity regulator. It's effectively a self-assessment system. So you assess for yourself and you declare your compliance or otherwise. They do obviously reserve the right to request your compliance record, and I suppose if any issue ever arose or anybody made a complaint against you, that's when they most likely probably would come attempting to find your compliance record. But no, you don't have to submit anything apart from confirming compliance.
Okay. Thanks.
And that's just if you're registered, Kathya, isn't that right?
Oh yeah, if you're a registered charity,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting any income apart from, like you mentioned there, something like, was it a 500,000 you said, or something, needs to do a return? If you're operating on...
no, sorry, apologies. Every registered charity needs to do a return. Sorry if I made some comment that sounded otherwise. No, every registered charity, if you have income of €2,000 and you're a registered charity, you have to make a return.
And the return is to the regulator in that case. Yeah.
If you're not a limited company, so if you're a limited company, you'd actually be making your returns to the company's registration office.
Yeah,
but if you're unincorporated, you would be making a financial statement return to the charities regulator. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. Anyone else? Patricia? Yep. Sorry, again, you're on mute there.
Yep. I suppose I know people feel that to register as a charity is quite daunting, and the work that's involved in it. But I certainly see from statutory agency who fund either through lottery funding or through small grants, there's going to be a requirement for groups to be registered as a charity and to comply. So you can put this off, but you might find small grants that you've been getting along will no longer be available to you. So I think we've got a year in which to get our houses in order, and might have some grace with the statute like Pobble and the local authorities and the HSE. But we've got a year, I think, to get our houses in order, and we might find ourselves excluded from some of the grants we've previously been afforded. That's my own sort of looking down the tracks.
A good point.
I would completely agree with you. It's a very good point. Yeah.
Anybody else? Any questions? Yes, Aisling. Sorry, go Aisling first and then Geraldine.
Sorry. Hi. This is another complicated one.
They're never easy, are they? You wouldn't be asking if they were easy.
I'd be the administrator now for Screened Marred Community Council and their directors for the last 2 years. And at the same time when I was employed, they brought in some new directors as well. And the charitable side of things would have been new to me. And I went on a few of, I think it was this time last year, but then COVID hit and one thing another and time went on. And I'm familiarising myself with it again and asking kind of questions and how it's set up, because it was, the community council was set up 30 years ago, and to build and create and manage the centre. And at some point they registered and had a charitable number. And then a couple of years ago, they got involved with Pobble and the CSP scheme, and they had to become incorporated. So they went down that road and got incorporated in that. And I think they actually had to change about 3 years ago their governance in that, to make it clear that the company was the main company, development company, and the community council worked on the day-to-day running of it in underneath. Now the community council has the charitable number. We've got the same address. So at some point they were told the development company couldn't get a charitable number because you can't give a charitable number to another group with the same address. And I'm just wondering, they're doing the returns from the community council, which is actually financially, it's a nil return. And then they're doing all the audit accounts for the development company. And I don't know what's I think the charitable number should be with the development company, and the community council should, and I just seen it yesterday actually. I just don't know what happened in the past where the charities that are changing legal structure, which I take it that's what happened a good few years back, became incorporated, they should have notified that their body was changing and their structure was changing, and then notified to revenue. And it seems to be in the last, just 3 years ago, then they tried to apply for, and I don't know who was advising who or what at the time. So what's your advice on it, basically?
Okay, so I probably should have actually mentioned there are actually two different charity numbers. So there's the charity registration number for this charities regulator, and you may actually have a different charities number with the revenue commissioners. I'm not sure that they're necessarily the same number. So Ashley, in your case, yes, I think what should have happened is they should have advised that they were actually incorporating the old organization that existed. You mentioned there that it's making nil returns under the charity number because it doesn't actually earn the income or make the payments.
It's not. It's now the new development company. Yeah.
To be honest, my advice would actually be to write to the charities regulator and explain what happened. And I don't think there'll be any significant issue. I don't believe that it's true that you can't get two charity numbers for businesses at the same address or charities at the same address, because there would be charities that might share an office. So that would make no sense.
Okay, right.
Yeah. But I think my first approach would be to write to them and explain, you know, how it developed, even though you don't have the full history. And it might actually be quite a simple fix. But the charities regulator will want the limited company in particular registered as a charity on its website. So it may just tell you to start registration and cease the old registration.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that would be my advice. That would be what I would do anyway.
Yeah.
The longer it goes on, the harder it is to sort that out.
So yes, and the directors are, they said, I told them that I was going on this tonight, and I had a quick meeting with two of them yesterday, and they said, oh, well then, we don't know, they were the newest ones that joined, and they said, you have a good few questions to ask them tonight and see where we get this sorted out, basically, because I can't, the way it is now, I can't see how it benefits anyone, or I wouldn't have thought the development company could use the charitable number for the community council, like, because they're kind of seen, they're two separate. So so okay, we'll write and explain to them, and
tell them you want to know exactly what you need to do to fix it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, because once they know you're keen to fix it, they'll probably be more obliging and helping.
Okay, good. Okay, lovely. Thank you.
No problem.
I think Geraldine, did you want to come in?
Hi, it was just a quick one. It's just, well, I feel we've got quite a lot of work to do, and it would be helpful to get Kathya's slides tonight, and Kira, your contact details.
Yeah, sure.
Help going forwards.
Yeah, no worries. I just want to make a comment with Hugh Gallagher is on here. He says he doesn't have a mic and he can't just communicate to everyone, but he just messaged me here to say that he's part of a small group, and similar to the case of Paul and Rita, and that he would be pushing for, you know, the main organisation to take the responsibility and make the returns, and that's what happens in his case. I'm not sure what group now, he might let me know, but he's in a small group and he sends back his annual report to them, a financial report back to the main group, I assume. Let you know if he comes in again.
Yeah, that's why I asked that question, was if you were sending financial reports into those parent bodies, we call them, then you'd absolutely be sure it was their responsibility. But when you're not, I would have concerns.
And there must be so many groups like that are affiliates or members of a larger national group. So it'd be good to get clarity on that. Actually, I'm sure it's a common question.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? Yeah, sorry, I don't actually know your name there. It's not, your name hasn't appeared in front of you. Lady in the blue there, you're on mute as well. Hi.
Yeah, I don't know, can you hear me there? You can?
I hear you, yeah.
Indeed.
It's just, I'm involved with a community group. Yeah, community group. And I suppose we're just 3 years in existence. And we did try to apply for a charity number, but we just found the whole process very complicated, and we abandoned it on numerous occasions. And I'm just wondering, does the Volunteer Centre offer any help to groups to go ahead with, to try and get a charity number?
We can do, you know what I mean? We can have a chat with you and see what we can help with, yeah. What group are you with?
I'm with a Connery Mullinabrina Community Enhancement.
Okay.
We're just a non-for-profit. We do just community projects, and we do very little income. Most of our money would be raised through, we have a stall at our local farmers market, and we recycle books and sell them. We'd just be involved with different community trails and different things like that. But any money that's raised is going back into the community.
So you're not a limited.
We just think we probably should qualify for charitable status. We actually are a limited company. We went ahead with that because we felt it was given us a legal structure within the community, and it kind of made it easier to apply for grants and everything when we were incorporated, you know.
Yeah, so it sounds like you should be registered from my understanding. And was it just the process? Was it just the form filling and just the whole process around it that you found difficult?
Yeah, I suppose. Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose we are just volunteers. We're trying to do it, you know, a few hours in the evening or that. But it's just if we got any sort of guidance at all, I think it would help us.
Yeah, sure. Look, what's your first name? Sorry, because it's not coming up in front of you there.
Sorry, Breach, yeah.
Right. Yeah, no worries.
Breach,
I can
yeah.
touch base with you, you know, over the next few days after this call, and we can see what we can help you with. And I suppose, you know, as I say, we've been through it ourselves, and that's kind of where we're coming from, that, you know, we can help certainly based on our own experience. Yeah, no worries, Breach.
That would be great, yeah. That would be great. Thanks.
Patricia.
Sorry, I just take off mute. Would the PPN have a role in supporting small charities around this, in terms of that they're there as quite a skilled staff team employed, like under the office of the local authority?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose we work a good bit alongside the PPN as well, and I suppose that's kind of the difficulty in the sector at the moment, that there is no defined agency or person or group for people like Breach to go to with these kind of queries. You know, it's a real gap. And I know Sarah personally in the PPN, and I said we're all willing to help, you know, that kind of way, but there is no direct assistance or a group that you can say that's absolutely the group that should do that or that would do that or could, but
because it's very hard to navigate across all these different websites, and then am I interpreting this information correctly?
Yeah.
You know, and it's if you're coming in as a complete novice to it, it's a minefield.
Absolutely, yeah. It is very difficult. And actually, just speaking of the PPN, it is well worth being a member of them. I don't know if you are, Breach, but you know, you'll also see on forums going forward, on funding forums, is your PPN number. You know, will also be, so that's another kind of layer that you're going to go into as well, that you're going to be asked for on funding forms. But they're well worth being a member of anyway, and being connected with, and you know, getting information and information sharing and networking across the sector as well. But yeah, I'll talk to Sarah about, you know, what supports that we could possibly put in place together to support groups around this kind of thing as well. Anybody else? Everyone okay?
I think we might be off the hook here.
Yeah. If there isn't any other questions, we can wrap it up. Everyone seems okay. Look, that was great, guys. I hope that you found that useful. Thanks very much to Kathya for her time, and I have all your email addresses and everything now, so I will forward on those bits, templates, etc. Touch base with whoever that wanted extra information, and Kathya has a little bit of homework to do there to find out an answer on those queries as well. So is that okay? We can leave it at that for this evening. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kira.
Thank you.
Very, very, very useful. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.